Are we finally ready to deal with the guns? You know, every time we have a shooting, school shooting, mass shooting, assassination, every time we hear the same thing from some people. Now isn't the time. It's too soon to talk about the guns. Talking about the guns politicizes things. We shouldn't talk about how easy it is to get guns. We shouldn't talk about how a person with a firearm can end a human life from hundreds of feet away in a matter of seconds, as happened to Charlie Kirk yesterday. And then nothing happens. We wait until the headlines fade and the vigils are over and some of the shock wears off, although that's going to be different when there's video floating around of your assassination. We'll talk about the impact of that a little bit later. And then the conversation is gone until next time. Charlie Kirk has been assassinated in broad daylight at a public event. And if now is too soon, tell me when the right time is. Because if after this happens, we can't talk about the guns, if after the Sandy Hook shooting of 2012, we can't even get universal background checks passed, I don't know, guys. I don't know. We keep waiting, and all we can count on is that there's going to be a next time. Now, this is not a story about hunting. You can talk about hunting, but this is not a story about hunting. This is not a story about self-defense in the abstract. This is not a philosophical debate over the Second Amendment. This is simply, will political violence become a bigger part of public life in the United States of America, where disagreements, rather than being settled at the ballot box and through activism, are settled with bullets? Or are we finally going to talk about the damn guns? Now, every single time this happens, and I'm going to be totally upfront with you, I have no interest in hiding anything. As of the moment I'm recording this, we don't know the identity of the shooter. We don't know the gun that was used. We don't know how it was obtained. We don't know any of that. And every single time this happens, and I give you a list of 10 to 12 things that we could do to reduce gun violence, the common reaction from the more guns in more places people is, you know, David, in this particular case, the background checks wouldn't have changed anything. Or, you know, David, in this particular scenario, a red flag law to take guns away from people who are psychiatrically unstable wouldn't have made a difference because nobody knew that the shooter was psychiatrically unstable. As I've said before, no one change will prevent every shooting. But we know that this level of shootings isn't necessary because many other countries don't have this level of shootings. Even some countries that the gun ownership rate is relatively high. Switzerland is often mentioned. Well, a lot of the people in Switzerland that own guns don't have them at home. A lot of them that do, you know, it's a rifle that's up on a wall, and it's not something anyone would even think of culturally of saying, I might solve a personal problem with the gun. So the point here is no one rule, no one law will solve everything. And mental health and other issues are factors. But we've still got to talk about the damn guns. We have to admit that the system is broken, right? I mean, in this case, okay, it's a shooter with a long-range weapon, takes aim from a distance, ends a life before anybody could react. Charlie Kirk had security. It's not really a security failure. It's a society where the tools of assassination are unfortunately in some places easier to get than mental health care. Okay, so that's an aspect of it. The violent rhetoric, right? There is a cultural issue here. When political leaders, media figures, Trump himself, influencers, when there is this environment of talking about how great gun ownership is, alluding to violence, it starts to become stochastic terrorism, something we've talked about before. It's more than just riling up the base. You're creating the conditions for people to see killing as justified. We have to get to a point where action is really demanded. And I don't know if the country is there yet. Obviously, universal background checks. Of course, limits on weapons designed for mass killing. If you're into hunting, well then, focus on the weapons that make sense for hunting. But we need real enforcement here on what's available, the thoughts and prayers stuff, and from the politicians taking NRA blood money, we just can't do it. And then we also have to answer the question, is this a country where you can give your political views and be safe? And there are lots of countries where that's the case. I know more people than I would like to admit who have moved to the UK, Italy, Spain, Colombia, and other places, and they go Denmark, and they say, there's culture shock, there's language issues, there's immigration issues, there's work issues, but when I drop my kid off at daycare, it doesn't even enter my mind that somehow a gun might end up here, or they might end up being targeted. And that is a pretty important difference between what's going on in the United States and what's going on elsewhere. Here we're talking about bulletproof backpacks and active shooter drills. And I know people personally, 9, 10 families, couples, that have gone to places and they go, you don't know the relief that it is when I just don't have to think about the school shootings and the guns, and I just don't have to think about it. I don't have to wonder, does little Sally's new friend have guns in her house? Do I have to check with the parents? Do you own firearms? And that is a really a big source of relief. So the whole "it's too soon" thing has gotten us where we are. And I've already addressed the deplorable political views of Charlie Kirk. That's not what this is about. And every time we delay after a tragedy, it's just an invitation for the next one. So we shouldn't wait. We shouldn't pretend that mourning and prevention and all of it have to happen in separate seasons. We can try to stop the next one while we are still mourning this one. We can grieve what happened to Charlie Kirk and decide we don't want to have a country that's like this anymore. I don't know that we're going to do it. And one of the aspects of this that I think is important to talk about is the public nature of this assassination.